For most of human history, financial freedom was not a dream you worked toward, it was a privilege you were born into. If you weren't a king, a landlord, or a banker, your future was already written, and it did not end with you retiring on a beach. But quietly, over centuries, the rich refined a formula. A way of making money work for them instead of working for money. Today, for the first time, that formula is available to almost everyone, and the most powerful players in the system are hoping you stay too distracted, too overworked, and too confused to notice. You're watching Hidden Finance, where we dig beneath the headlines, decode the systems that shape wealth, and reveal the financial secrets most people are never taught. If you've ever felt like the game of money is rigged, this story is for you, because the rules haven't just changed, they've been rewritten. In the next few minutes, we're going to travel through centuries of financial history, from royal estates to Wall Street trading floors, to uncover how the rich created freedom in the past and the new method that could quietly change your future. Stay with this to the end, because understanding this shift may be the single most valuable piece of financial knowledge you ever learn. To understand financial freedom, we have to strip away the buzzwords and look at something brutally simple: who owns what? For most of history, wealth wasn't numbers on a screen, it was land, mines, ships, and people's labor. In medieval Europe, a few hundred families owned most of the land, and the land produced crops, rents, and taxes that flowed upward, generation after generation. If you were born a peasant, you worked. If you were born a lord, your assets worked. That, in its rawest form, is financial freedom, when your assets earn more than your labor needs to. By the 1600s and 1700s, something new began to appear: joint stock companies and early stock markets in places like Amsterdam and London. Rich merchants pulled capital to fund trading voyages under companies like the Dutch East India Company and the British East India Company. The risks were huge, ships could sink, wars could erupt, but the profits were staggering, and shareholders collected them without ever touching a sale. Owning shares in these ventures was the next evolution of financial freedom, shifting from owning land to owning pieces of business empires. But access was still tightly controlled. Only the wealthy and well-connected could participate, while the masses remained day laborers, servants, and soldiers. The Industrial Revolution in the 1800s took this logic and put it on rails, literally. Railway bonds and shares, steel mills, oil companies, they all needed capital, and stock markets grew into powerful machines for the wealthy to own industry. The names that became legendary, Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, understood one thing better than almost anyone else: you don't get free by working harder, you get free by owning more. They controlled monopolies, set prices, and captured entire industries, while millions of workers traded their hours for wages that stopped the moment they did. Again, the pattern remained: a small group owned the assets, and they enjoyed financial freedom. Everyone else rented their time just to survive. The early 20th century brought both promise and punishment. Ordinary people were finally allowed, in greater numbers, to dabble in the stock market. Especially in the roaring 1920s, brokers sold dreams of quick riches, fueled by credit and wild speculation. And for a brief moment, it looked like financial freedom might be within reach for the middle class. Then came 1929, the stock market crash that erased fortunes, bankrupted investors, and triggered the Great Depression. For an entire generation, markets became synonymous with danger and ruin, and the idea that ordinary people should own stocks was, for many, dead. After World War II, a different model of freedom was sold to the masses. You worked for one company for life, you got a steady paycheck, and you retired on a defined benefit pension paid by your employer. Financial freedom, for the average worker, didn't mean owning assets directly. It meant trusting that the company and the government would take care of you at the end. But behind the scenes, the old pattern persisted. Corporations and wealthy families still owned the factories, the brands, the intellectual property, and they collected the profits. The middle class felt secure, but their freedom was fragile, entirely dependent on promises made by institutions they didn't control. In the 1970s, the global financial system began to shift under the surface. Inflation surged, the Bretton Woods system collapsed, and governments struggled with mounting economic pressures. At the same time, corporations started moving away from guaranteed pensions towards something new, the 401k in the United States, and similar defined contribution plans elsewhere. On paper, this looked empowering. Suddenly, you were responsible for your own retirement investing. In reality, it opened a lucrative new frontier for the financial industry, which rushed in with complex mutual funds, high fees, and aggressive marketing that made simple ideas look impossibly complicated. Here is where the story quietly changes and where the new method begins to emerge. In 1975, a man named Jack Bogle launched something almost no one on Wall Street wanted, the first index mutual fund, designed simply to track the S&P 500. Instead of trying to beat the market with expensive research, he asked, what if regular people could own the entire market, hundreds of companies, at extremely low cost? He was laughed at. Competitors called it Bogle's folly, and many in the financial world mocked the idea as lazy, even un-American. But underneath the insults was a deeper fear. If this caught on, the rich would lose one of their biggest advantages, and the industry would lose a river of fee income. Because what Bogle had done, without the drama or the headlines, was to bottle the core of what the rich had enjoyed for centuries: broad, diversified ownership of productive assets. Index funds and later low-cost ETFs gave someone with a few $100s access to the same kind of ownership logic that once required fortunes. Own many businesses, spread your risk, let time and compounding do the heavy lifting. This was the beginning of the method most elites will never sit you down and explain: systematic, low-cost, automatic ownership of the global economy. It doesn't rely on picking hot stocks, predicting crashes, or listening to gurus shouting on TV. It relies on boring discipline: buy, hold, reinvest, and let your assets work while you sleep, the same way land and ships and railroads once worked for the powerful few. Yet even as this quiet revolution unfolded, a louder, flashier story drowned it out. Financial TV glamorized day trading, brokers encouraged frequent transactions, new products were rolled out with impressive names and hidden fees. The industry makes more money when you believe the game is complex, when you trade often, and when you chase excitement instead of building wealth. Consumer culture joins in, pushing you toward instant gratification. By now, pay later, upgrade, borrow, repeat, keeping you in a cycle where your future is always sacrificed for your present. The new method of financial freedom is simple enough to fit on a postcard, but everything around you is designed to make sure you never quite see it clearly. So what exactly is this method that they don't want you to learn, not because of conspiracy, but because of incentives? It starts with a mindset shift the rich have understood for centuries: your time is finite, but ownership can be infinite. Instead of asking how can I earn more per hour, the question becomes how can I own more of what earns 24 hours a day? In the past, that meant inheriting land or businesses. Today, it can mean automatically investing a portion of every paycheck into broad, low-cost index funds, ETFs, or diversified asset baskets. It means treating every dollar not as spending power, but as a tiny worker you can send out into the world to bring back more dollars. And the earlier you deploy them, the longer they work for you. Technology has supercharged this possibility in ways previous generations could barely imagine. Online brokerages have slashed trading costs to near zero. Fractional shares allow you to own a slice of companies with just a few dollars. Global ETFs give you exposure to entire continents through a single investment. Automation means you can set up contributions once and let them run, turning saving and investing into a default behavior instead of a constant decision. Real estate, once accessible only to those who could buy entire buildings, is now partially available through REITs and crowdfunding platforms. The gates that once protected the castle of financial freedom have not disappeared, but they are cracked wide enough for those who understand the game to slip through. The impact of this shift is already visible. A growing group of people around the world, through movements like FIRE Financial Independence, Retire Early, are quietly using this method to escape traditional careers decades before retirement age. They live below their means, invest heavily in diversified assets, and design lives where work becomes optional, not mandatory. At the same time, millions of others, equally intelligent and hardworking, are trapped in cycles of debt, speculation, and lifestyle inflation, never realizing that the same tools are available to them. The difference is not luck, it's knowledge, behavior, and whether they ever learn the boring, powerful truth about ownership and compounding. Of course, this new method is not a magic spell. It doesn't protect you from every market crash, every crisis, every unfair twist of fate. It requires patience in a world that worships speed and restraint in a culture that celebrates success. And it demands something that has always been in short supply, the willingness to think in decades, not days. But historically, that long horizon has always been the luxury of the rich. Now, with the right information and habits, it can become the strategy of anyone thoughtful enough to adopt it. Look back at the arc of financial history, and a pattern emerges. First, financial freedom was locked inside bloodlines and titles. Then it hid inside monopolies and corporate empires. Then it disguised itself inside pensions and promises made by companies and states. Today, it sits quietly inside low-cost, diversified ownership, available in your phone, your retirement account, your monthly budget, waiting for you to claim it or ignore it. As we close, remember this: the greatest secret of the rich was never that money buys freedom, but that owning what creates money buys time. And time is the only real freedom we ever have. If this shifted how you see the game, you've just uncovered another layer of hidden finance, the forces shaping who gets ahead and who gets left behind. Subscribe, follow, and stay with Hidden Finance as we continue to expose the stories, strategies, and systems that can turn confusion into clarity and income into independence, because the next chapter of your financial history is unwritten, and what you choose to own, starting today, will decide how free you really become.